All right, so I want to talk about autism in young women and adults as well, but specifically focusing on young women with autism and the dangers of the fact that it combines delayed processing and the fact that all of us always go through life with good intention or no intention. Autistic people don't operate the way that others do. We don't we don't think of things the way that others do either. So it takes us longer than most to realize things that we've been through that are traumatic that others would have processed immediately. It takes us longer than normal to realize that things were wrong or that somebody had bad intentions for us. And especially because people who have bad intentions usually keep you really busy mentally. Um, so you don't have a chance to actually process what they're doing to you. Similarly to like psychological torment, they make you exhausted, tired, and distracted. Lots of information all the time, but it's all just a distraction so that you don't have a chance to actually process things the way that you need to. So, the danger of rape is really big because, again, if you're not careful about who you're around, and if you don't know the dangerous things that go on in the world, because maybe you've been in a lot of dangerous situations, but it would never occur to you, for instance, that somebody would place a poison or a date rape drug in my beverage, right? It never would have occurred to me before. It wasn't talked about when I went to school. And this is a very real danger. And not only do women get raped a lot after that, but worse things can happen as well. So people can poison your food, they can poison your drink, and all it takes is a second. And the repercussions for it are horrific. You won't have use of your body, you won't have use of your words, of your mind. I learned that there's a substance called GHB, which is odorless and tasteless, and that is what people used to drug and rape me multiple times when I was a young woman. I was usually with friends, and the thing that I learned later is that they were a lot older than me and they didn't know either about, GHB and things like this. But I just can't completely understand why something didn't seem wrong to them. I don't really completely understand that, and I'm never going to be able to. And they've never given an explanation either. But the reality is you're all in danger if you're going somewhere and you think you can trust people, because this has happened to me from people that I didn't know, people that I knew and thought I could trust, and people that I definitely knew and should have been able to trust. So it's kind of a cruel world for everyone that's decent, that has no intentions or good intentions. But for autistic people, it's extra because we don't have the same processing capabilities that others do. So make sure that your friends that you keep around you are not putting you in harm's way, that they're not being calculating. It's going to take you a second to be able to process it, but I want all autistic people or anybody who goes through life with no intention or good intention to take extra care in who you have around you. It's better for you to dive into, most autistic people have so many hobbies and interests that we can keep ourselves busy with those alone. And we don't mind doing them every single day and making them a part of our life. It actually gives us a lot of strength to do that and makes us feel really happy to be alive. So it's actually something that, if you take extra time in between, especially when you're young, there's so much pressure on young people to have friends, to make friends, to be around friends. And it's more important to make sure that your friends have good intention or no intention when they're interacting with you. So take time to think about how they make you feel. Take time to think about what they've said to you. And if you have questions about it, ask for clarity. I made a huge mistake in my life by always kind of letting people say and do whatever and not really speaking up for myself very much. And now I have what I call Autism Unleashed, which means, I was present for all of those horrific moments I've been through in my life. I could hear and see what everybody was doing and putting me through. I just had select mutism. So I couldn't always respond to it and articulate it. Or if I had been date raped, I couldn't use my words or even my body at all. This is also why being spinal cord injured is incredibly triggering to me, because I was drugged and raped a lot when I was young. And that's the only other time I haven't had use of my body. And because the man that I was with put me through that after he crippled me as well. So it's scary and triggering. So trusting the wrong friends, but also making sure that you are cautious, because we are in danger of being put into situations by being too trustworthy. We will trust people with no explanation and no real good reason to trust people. We trusted people because we're trustworthy. We trust people because we have no intention and good intention. But that's not how this world operates right now. I wish that it was. And if I could change the world, that is what I would change. I would make a world where people had no intention or good intention all the time, because this is a dangerous world that we live in, and the only way we can change it is by everyone adapting to that. No intention or good intention. And I know that there is going to be change, and I know that it's here. It's just going to take a little while for it to habanero, because I don't eat ketchup with everyone else. So being cautious of abuse and coercive relationships, especially if you're raised in a home where there's any form of abuse, then you're going to think that it's normal, and you're going to be less likely to understand what a healthy relationship and environment looks like. So I'll tell you what it looks like. No one ever laying their hands on you ever, unless it's in love and with permission and consent. And it looks like having conversations, even when they're challenging, for each person and every person to work through issues so that you can have a cohabitation that works well with everybody. So if anyone is using bullying via silencing, their hands on you, anything like that, that is not okay. That is an abusive and coercive relationship, and it will start that way. If people in the beginning act really accepting of who you are, because autistic people, again, we're very much who we are. Of course, we have flaws and negative sides and triggering things that happen, and we've gone through our own trauma, so we also are going to bring things into the relationship. But most importantly, a lot of other people will pretend to be like you, and then they'll completely change. And an example of that is that I am like an avid hiker. I love nature. I loved camping. I'm a shaman woman, so I'm really into birds and spiritual signs, and I'm like very into astrology and meditation and magic. And I also, I had to learn. So for me to be autistic, I didn't have anyone there that was going to help me design life in a way that could work for me. So I wasn't able to make a lot of the adaptations that people can that are autistic, especially today. But even when some people were younger, because they might have known that they were autistic, so they kind of got to have these allowances made for them. I had to figure out how to do this on my own. So abusive and coercive relationships puts us in a lot of danger, because what happens is you grow up in a place, especially when we live in a world that doesn't really, now autism is becoming a conversation. People are learning about it. People are talking about it. A lot of us that are around my age group, like 38 years old, are starting to realize, oh, that's what was wrong with me. So when I was a young person and I left home young, and I didn't talk about why, and I was put into a lot of bad situations. I was drugged and raped out with friends where I should have been able to trust. The reality is, yes, they should have maybe stepped in or, thought more about that situation. But the reality is nobody should be putting a toxin in your drink without your permission and knowledge. That's why there's an old understanding that drink and food is something that should never be altered without someone's knowledge. So that's really, really important for people, first of all. But second of all, making sure that you're really careful, because once you get put into these situations and they happen so close together, you don't have a chance to process them because it's so traumatizing. And with autism, we have delayed processing, which is very real. It's not a choice. So I couldn't sit there and think about all the bad things that I went through and decide to feel how I felt about them, because my brain didn't work that way. It worked with me waking up, facing the day, moving forward, and I had to make sure that I was there for myself, because no one was going to come into my life and be like, I'm safe, I've got you, how can I be there for you? That didn't happen for me. A lot of times with abusive situations, people don't want to get involved if it's a small community or a small family or a tight-knit family or whatever it may be. Other people have their own stuff going on. And I was fortunate that there were people in my community that would help and that tried to allow me to be a part of their life and their family. But there was still lots of trauma going on that they didn't know about. Lots of trauma I had already been through that they didn't know about. And anytime it rocked the boat with any family member, I left and would remove myself. If there was like a child of theirs that had a kind of discrepancy with me or gave me like a negative energy about things, I would leave because I didn't want to be a part of a family that wasn't mine, that was not going to accept me, because I already was part of a family that didn't really accept me. Now, also, my family didn't know about all of those horrible things that I went through when I was a teenager, because let me tell you something, parents, your daughters don't tell you about all the things that they've been through, no matter how much you sit at a table and say, tell me if somebody does something to you. You don't talk about it, because there's so much shame that is involved with what we go through, because we live in a world and in a society that says all the time, you should have left sooner. No, I shouldn't have left sooner. When people abused me, they should have kept their hands to themselves. When people gave me a drink, they never should have poisoned it, and no person should have raped me. So this whole I should have left sooner, I should have known better, no. People need to have accountability and stop being psychopaths that are dangerous. They need to have accountability, because the reality is everybody has somebody in their life, even if it's themselves, that would never want this to happen to their person that they love or themselves, so they shouldn't do it to another. Accountability world, that's what we need, and then change will happen. So, then people gossip. They gossip all the time. So in small communities and everything, and especially when people abuse, they will be the number one people to gossip about you and spread lies and rumors about you. So they'll start to say things like people thought that I had a drug addiction, which I've never had. People thought all these things about me that were untrue, and they just believed them. And I was autistic, so I just assumed everybody knew what I did, almost as if everybody was present in my life all the time. Like, well, they must know what I know. They know that I'm just trying my best to survive, and I wake up every day and I try to face the day. And of course I'm imperfect. I've had a lot of bad things that you're faced with and you go through life. And I just have to say, I've never done anything that didn't let me sleep at night. So the spinal cord injury didn't let me sleep at night, but I've never participated in something that kept me up at night. So it's really important to use your own moral judgment. And of course, you can be kind of coerced into negative situations, or people can guide you down the wrong path. That's very common as well. But something that young women need to be very aware of. Now, I was like 14 and 15 when these things started happening, but even at 12 and 13, I was exposed to quite a lot of them and quite a lot of bad situations. And when I was younger than that, I had bad things happen to me as well. So this is something that young women in the world need to be educated on, because you would think, oh, this YouTube video that I'm gonna post might not be safe for young women, because what if I swear, or what if the word rape is too intense? But guess what? It's better for them to know about it and have this knowledge within themselves when they're young than to experience it and live in a world that's going to constantly blame young women for things that horrific men have done to them. So I think it's better to let them be educated at a young age and know about this, so that they can see the warning signs early. When you're a young person, before you enter into a bathroom where there's a public place, make sure if you go in there and you have a bad feeling about something, you leave. If there's any person in there that seems foreboding, if there's a man in there and you're a woman using the restroom and you're scared because you're by yourself, just leave. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with you being safer and taking extra precautions, if nothing else. It doesn't mean that you're scared or anything like that. It means that you're being smart and you're looking out for yourself, because in this world, that's what you have to do until we have a better world. So be careful when you're in public places, when you're alone. When you're a young person, don't ever drink, especially if you're alone. And also if you're with groups of friends, don't drink with them either if you're alone. Make sure that you're really paying attention and safe. So when I was really young, we would go out dancing, and my parents were really fine with it, which was nice because they were giving me freedom, and I should have actually been safe in that environment. I would go, of course it was a club where you were supposed to be 18 or older, And I also would go to places that you were supposed to be 21 and older. And I started when I was like 14, but we didn't go to drink. We went to dance. Like, we didn't go to the bar and order alcoholic beverages, and we didn't try to get men to order us alcoholic beverages either. It only started happening when we started to try to go places afterwards, if we started to try to connect with people afterwards. You know, you see the movie Save the Last Dance, and I was like, I'm gonna meet my future husband at the dance, and we will fall in love and live happily ever after and inspire each other. And that didn't happen. So you have to be really mindful of these things when you're a young person. I think making sure that your surroundings are the safest possible is really important, and making sure that, again, your friends, even if these friends that I have are offended I'm making this video, I don't care, because this is going to keep people safe. Even if their families are offended. This is the problem with a small community. When you start to speak up, a lot of guilt hits people, and it causes them to want to silence you instead of amplify your voice so that you can be heard and help people. Like, I am trying to help people with what I've learned in my life by not speaking up, because I'm autistic, because of delayed processing, because it was dangerous for me to speak up, because I was surrounded by people that put me through these things. So it's really important when you are young that you have the time and the energy and the space to think about who your friends are, how do they make you feel, what are their intentions, what are they bringing into your life? Because I didn't really like the taste of alcohol when I was a young person. So it wasn't until I was around friends that were drinking that I began to drink a little bit. And I was like any young person. I experimented with things here and there. There were some things I never tried. One of the rumors about me was crazy because it was about something that I've never even tried or been around. So it's kind of wild to kind of see what happens in small communities, but how dangerous that is. So also, if you're in a small community, do not gossip about young people, or any people really. But especially when there's a young woman who's on her own, clearly isolated, and doesn't really have people to protect her, don't gossip about her. Don't spread rumors about her, and don't believe everything that you hear, because that can cause a lot more harm to come to her. In my life, that 100% contributed to me being in more dangerous situations than not, because people believed lies and rumors about me and were happy to just let me be completely alone and isolated and not have anyone in my life. That can't change. I'm never going to be able to go back in the past, and I wouldn't want to. My life has been enough. I've seen enough. I've done enough. I don't need to do anything over to try to make it better, because I'm never going to come back to the earth, for real. So this is good. I'm almost 38. I have a spinal cord injury that causes me to go into autonomic dysreflexia, which is life-threatening. My lifespan is probably going to be shortened. I'm fine with that. I don't have a life right now that I'm like, I'm grateful every day that I'm alive, ish. I do my own thing. I have my hobbies. I'm trying to be patient with the systems that failed me horrifically and how unjust this has been. But at the same time, I don't need any length of time to be on this earth. I have been ready to die for a long period of time. When I had cholera in India, I was ready to die. I've been dead now. I've left my body, been dead. People don't like to hear you say you've been dead, but I've been dead. So for me, my understanding of life is different than others. But I need to make sure that people are listening and paying attention, not to shame, blame, or cause guilt in people that were in my life at any point, but to make sure that the world can be safer for other young people. And I want to focus specifically on autism because I was not diagnosed, and people did not pay attention to autism unless you were like in the movie Rain Man. Nobody knew about other forms of autism. So it would have been really obvious if you looked at my life as a teen from that perspective. Oh, everybody just assumed it was that I had a drug problem or something else was going on. I had a trusting the wrong people, got raped too much and abused too much, put into a lot of bad situations with no one really caring or wanting to get involved problem. It's very different. I had an autism problem, which meant I understood things, but I also couldn't comprehend all of them. So I could understand jobs, making money, budgeting, paying bills, but I also didn't really fully understand and comprehend it. So it took me longer to kind of sit back and figure out how to do things like budget and how to do things like not having a predictable income if you're waitressing and know exactly how to spend your money. What people expect of you without asking you. So like a lot of people have so many expectations of you as a person, and you don't know that because you would ask someone if you had an expectation. Like if I was with a partner and I needed a hug, I would be like, I really need some affection and loving right now. Can you come love up on me? And if you're in a healthy relationship, they would, unless like it's like a weird situation, then they would say like 5 minutes or whatever. But if you're in an unhealthy relationship, they're going to withhold things like that from you on purpose to use control over you. And that's a huge problem for people that are autistic as well. So gossip and lies due to misunderstanding the persona of an autistic person, specifically in the younger days. So I had to do all of this myself. So by the time I was like in my early 20s, it became less obvious that I was autistic to others, but more obvious to me that I just was different. And that's because I stopped going out completely at night. I needed to catch up on my bills. I went into there's bad situation after bad situation. From like 14 until 23 was chaos in my life. I mean, I started out with like goals and plans. When I was 11, my first goal and plan got changed because my grandparents had a farm. My dad worked the farm for my grandfather, his stepdad, because my biological grandfather was in Texas. I only met him once. Harris is his last name. Choctaw mixed race. So, my goal was become a professional ballerina. I know, typical, right? But supposedly I was a good dancer according to people. And I did get a lot of joy from dancing. I don't know if I was a good dancer, but I did love to dance. And I loved to sing, I loved art, I loved music, very creative. I loved fashion. My mom was a great seamstress, so I made my first outfit when I was 7. I was really, really, really into that whole area of the, I guess, Renaissance women is what they call it. So that's what I would joke about when I worked at the daycare in fall of 2020, that I was a Renaissance woman. Like my focus was all creative all the time. Now I wanted to do that when I was a young person. And then my goal was around the time I was 30, I would take over the farm for my dad. It would have been a good time period for him to start to retire. We still could have worked together so that if I had a family for some reason yet, or met someone or whatever, then everything could have worked well. We could have balanced each other and he could have retired. But then they had to sell the farm because of tax reasons and to make sure that my grandmother was going to be looked after properly, which I respect her husband very much for doing that for her. I think it's very important for men to look after their wives, or for people to look after their family, but very important for husbands to make sure that upon their death that their wives are provided for. It's really, really important. So I think that I respect him for that, but it broke my heart when I was 11. I didn't really know how to deal with that, but I was like, okay, so now I needed a new plan, and I also stopped dancing. And then when I was 14, I worked at a salon, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna own a salon, I'm gonna have a boutique, and I'll own a restaurant and a bar, because my idea at that age was that men would be bringing their women, or women would be bringing their women, or men would be bringing their women, whatever you're into is fine, and they would go and you would get your hair done, and maybe the women would shop or whatever with my designs in my boutique, and the men could go to the restaurant and the bar, or the women, or whatever you're into, or however it worked, non-judgmental. So that was kind of a goal for a few years, and I was starting to understand the business, but I still didn't really understand budgeting or finances. I didn't really understand. I knew that taxes got taken from my paycheck, but I didn't understand where they went. I didn't know what 401k was. I could do basic math, but I didn't really have anybody sit down with me and go through the business side of things with me. But anytime people talked, I listened to everything because I had goals. So anytime people talked about consolidating debt, credit card debt, interest rates, and how they can stack up, all these things I always paid attention and listened to because I had goals in my life from the time I was really young. And the first goal didn't work. The second goal didn't work. So at 16, I became a waitress, and then my life got more chaotic than it already was between 14 and 16. And I also didn't really still understand how to do things like budget and focus, and I was really generous. So if people needed something, or if people just wanted to buy something I usually would without thinking about it. I donated money regularly. I became homeless. I lived out of a car at one point. And I kept all of my clothes and my shoes and my jewelry with me, and I stayed employed, and I didn't tell people I was homeless. Sometimes I would stay at my one of my ex-friends' uncle's camps when no one was there, and listen to the Red Sox, because I used to be a really big, too passionate Red Sox fan, which is why I had to quit it, because it was bad for my health. So I ended up, kind of homeless and misplaced, and then living with the wrong people and misunderstood still, and put into bad situations because things that other people would have found obvious, I didn't. And I didn't care or think about them either, but they were paranoid. So those paranoid people put me in worse harm, and that caused me to be raped more and harmed more, but in a way and by people that you're not allowed to talk about it. So this is very serious, and things that people need to understand and know about. If there's a young person in your life, ask them. I know everybody says that, like, oh, people don't tell the truth when they're doing this, this, and this, but the reality is, ask people. If someone had been like, hey, like, you're living out of your car, why? I would have sat down and told them. When I was around 23, I had more than one woman in my life who was in her 60s that was like, wow, you've lived more of a life than I have already. And I was like, I know, it's been really chaotic, and I really just need some peace. I believed I could find love, or that love would find me, because really most of the people that were in my life romantically presented themselves to me like they wanted a relationship, like they were ready for something, and then they turned out to not be. Either they played games with you, they used coercive control and abuse, maybe they had things going on in their life that were too intense, and they didn't understand me being autistic was kind of not really, it wasn't going to work with the situations going on. I also, ended up around a lot of people in my life that came from multiple backgrounds, and I was exposed to a lot of different things, and I just processed everything the way it was processed. For me, the words halal and haram are things that I use a lot, but I use my own discrepancy about what that is. Not because I'm going to go to an Islamic country and I'm going to try to convince them that what I'm saying is perfect or true or right, but because I think the key to a successful world is to kind of adopt these halal and haram by my standards, with exception of cultural identity and identification, only because I'm a really non-judgmental, fair person. And so that alone would make a better world right there. One of the things that I noticed, because of how much harm I was put in, is that the wars going on between, the drug wars going on between drugs and the government, which is the same thing, because people in government get themselves entangled in it too. And that has put me in a lot of danger and gotten me harmed. And it's because people were paranoid on one side or the other, because they had no clue what kind of person I was. And they either got paranoid because they thought I was going to say something, or they got paranoid because they thought that I understood. Half the time, when this happened to me as a teen, I didn't even understand what they were doing. I didn't even know. I had no clue. You can't be subtle with an autistic person. You have to be very direct. If you're subtle with us, it might take us a decade to figure it out, or more, depending on how much trauma we've already been through. So it's really important for people to figure out some way to make that work better. I tried to mediate because I was thrown in the center of a lot of danger, and my nature was to say, this is what I've been through. This is what none of you want any of your family members to go through, and you're all saying that you're trying to keep your family safe. That's what everybody argues on every side all the time. Family, my family, my family, my family, my family. So who's gonna stop and say, all of you care about the same thing, so you're the same, so stop it. So that you can keep people safe, even if they aren't your family. Because I didn't have a bunch of people that were gonna make sure that I was safe. I ended up going through hell, and I didn't say anything, and everybody treated me like I was a threat when I wasn't. Although God is very protective of me. So it turns out that God really did intervene and start to seek retaliation for what some people did to me. Make sure you look up. God is very protective of me. I never used the word God before I was killed by my ex when he broke my spine. I always said the universe or something different, but now I say God. or Allah, but God usually is what the word that I use. So lack of community awareness, paranoia due to people that are up to things that they assume you're caring about. Like, I had other things going on in my life when I was a teen. I had already been through hell, and I had my own goals and dreams, so I didn't give a shit what they were doing. I didn't care what they were up to on the side, you know. I care if they're going to put people through what they put me through. Then I care. That's a problem, and that needs to be something that they look at, because that's really messed up. It was a combination of a bunch of different people, and the things that they put me through, I won't share because that might be too much for people to hear. I've shared some of it, and people don't like hearing about it. But I will say that it's really important to me to share these experiences, and young women specifically that are autistic, to pay attention and to watch this. And you know what? If there's a man who wants to take you to a meeting because he says he has a job position for you, don't go, and don't go alone, and don't go with another young friend that's a female. Don't at all. Make sure that if you're meeting with anyone in these ways, it's not by yourself, because very rarely can these people be trusted. It's not like you grew up with this person and they are like, oh, this is a meeting about a job thing. This is like somebody that you met at work, you thought you could trust, that offers you a management position or something else and wants to take you to talk about it, and then what happened to me is horrific. So these are things that are really important. Don't get in cars with strangers. I watched a video where there's a little kid and her mom was trying to say, like, oh, if somebody offers you candy, what are you going to do? She's like, I'm going to take it. If somebody shows you a puppy, what are you going to do? Like, I'm going to pet it. Like, that's me, even in my adult years. So I have to, I thought I was so cautious when I was in India. So cautious. I was like, oh my God, by the time I was there for a few months, I was so, integrated into everything, until there's puppies down a back alley. And then I'm like, oh my God, hey puppies. Like, I definitely just was not made for this world the way that it is. And many autistic people, or anyone with no intention or good intention, are not. So it's really important that you find yourself observing before you get into situations. Take a step back anytime there's something like this. Take a step back and think about what the dangers could be. And it's not to make people paranoid, because that's what dangerous people will do. Dangerous people, to get away with this, will make the people that talk about it seem like they're paranoid. They'll be like, oh, she's just paranoid, she's just scared, she just doesn't know what she's talking about, she just this, she just that. But I assure you all, I'm braver than you'll ever know. And the reality is that these are situations that, if I had been on either side of these dangerous people, part of their family, they would have protected me. But I wasn't, so they didn't care. And this is what we need to change about the world. Is like, who's going to care for all of the people that don't have anyone? Who's going to care about them? Why can't the whole world change to start to care and just think of everybody as someone that they would want? They don't have to like them, and they don't have to be around them all the time. But if you see a dangerous situation and you're a human being, it is your job to intervene and try to do something or say something while being safe and thinking about a lot of aspects. Because of course, you don't want to be a vigilante, which I have done more than once in my life. So anyway, basically, autistic people, we have a lot of danger because of delayed processing. So we don't always have the time and the articulation ability to process everything that we've been through. Through what I just went through, I also want to talk about human trafficking. I have been in danger of that multiple times in my life, and this time was probably the scariest and came the closest to me being disappeared for forever. And all of it went into all this other stuff I talked about. Community awareness, lack of community awareness, lack of having anyone, people believing lies and rumors, people spreading more lies and rumors, and really dangerous people integrating themselves into a community. All white people, by the way, because I know that a lot of times what happens is people get blamed for their cultural identification or their cultural identity. The people in this specific time period. I've been raped by more than just white people in my life, but that's a separate thing. What just happened to me was predominantly white people that put me in this situation. So I want to make that really clear so that people don't cause any race wars or start to talk about different religions being involved. And these are people that integrated themselves into the community or have lived in my community my whole life. These are people who will have businesses, they will say hi to you, they will interact with you, and to try to get away with what they're involved in, they don't think twice about using someone like me as a scapegoat. I am their favorite thing. And this is why I talked so much about all of the do-gooders of the earth today that keep filming everything that they do. You've got to kind of, one, reevaluate what you're doing it for, and two, you need to be careful about who you're posting. I watched people film one man who moved here from the Middle East, and he was talking about, they gave him money because he did something that was kind, or it was like a random gesture, and then they film him saying like, I don't have anyone, I always sit alone at lunch, thank you so much for helping me. And I was like, oh my God, do not post that. That man will become an easy scapegoat for the situations that I was just put in the middle of. And that's what they do. They find isolated people who everybody believes lies and gossip about, and then they target them. And that's what happened to me. And these are people who, they had powerful families, they had powerful job positions, they had places in a community. They never would have gotten in trouble, even if they had been like, yeah, it's me, and I'm the one doing it. They never would have been persecuted in a way that somebody like using me as a scapegoat has been my whole life, because some of these people caused all of these other dangerous things to happen to me because they wouldn't have accountability, or when I was thrown in the middle mediating, they wouldn't stand up and have the courage to claim what they have done or what they've been involved in, and were happy to see me be disappeared anyway. These are the things that I'm talking about, and I don't care who it offends or who feels guilty about it, because if it saves the lives of one person or 5 people, it is worth it. I don't want any person to go through what I've been through in my life, all because people just believed lies and rumors about me, instead of asking me, what's going on? What's happened in your life? Are you okay? How can I help you? Or reading, like I was in a place where everyone understood my words. I lived in the USA, and I was posting around all English-speaking people, and no one took this seriously, because all of the people who integrated themselves into the community and lied and spread rumors, they just believed it and then spread it around themselves and put me in a ton of danger. This is the closest, not the closest I've come to being human trafficked, because I've been in a lot of situations in the past where that was also going to be the fate. But this was a really dangerous situation, and not because of the people where I am now. It's definitely usually people that are international, and they gang up, and they're the ones that are the dangerous people. Like I said in other videos that I've made, like I love Peru, and the problem is not Peruvians. And when you go to Thailand, the problem is not Thai people. When you go to places, the problem is not the other places. It's actually a lot of white people that are really dangerous, that put people in these situations. And I'm not sure why. I don't know what the root is of it. I don't know what the cause is of it, or at least I can't share that in this video, because I'm trying to keep things like spirituality and religion out of it. And without me talking about spirituality and religion, you can't understand why things are the way they are on this earth. That's for separate conversations. But the reality is, autistic people are in more danger than the rest of the world, because we always go through life with no intention or good intention. And we have a habit of finding joy in things and in ways that others find enviable for some reason. And instead of thinking about how they can find that joy for themselves, they try to harm us instead. So they put us in more danger. I've had a lot of jealous women friends in my life that have caused me to go through harm and hell. My gay friends kept me the safest, always. My girlfriends, not so much, and very rarely. In fact, a lot of them are the reason that some of this stuff has happened and gone on this long, because instead of having accountability over their actions, they chose to just act like nothing. So this is really important for people to understand. And if you know an autistic person in your life, or you suspect yourself to be autistic, make sure that you inform yourself about these things. Delayed processing is something that we can't control when we process. That's one of the things I don't know how to make that better. That's gonna have to be something that somebody that's an autistic specialist talks to you about. And I'm watching a video on EDX right now about it. So I would encourage anyone with autism to download that app, and there's an autism course right now going on, and you can audit it for free, so you have access to a lot of material, and hopefully they talk about delayed processing a little bit more. I don't know what it is that causes us to have a time period that we don't process like the rest of the world, which is also partly why we have the ability to move forward seemingly happy, smiling every day, you know? You learn to love the little things when you've gone through a lot of trauma in life. And I don't know how I could have helped myself process things sooner, other than the fact that what I just went through was horrific and caused me to die a lot. And I needed to end up stopping working in order to process these things that I've experienced. And when I tried to reintegrate into society and community, everybody believed the lies and rumors, and there was medical cover-up involved. So I wasn't able to make the adaptations that I needed for my spinal cord injury, which is life-threatening, in order for me to even begin to be a part of the world, let alone think about being autistic and how that has hindered or helped me in areas. It's helped me in a lot of areas because my interest, I recultivated in my 20s, and nothing got in the way of those except for my 3 shoulder surgeries and then having a spine hit. I learned how to deal with my emotions. I learned how to make my life good for myself. I learned how to budget. I learned how to be focused. I learned how to accomplish tasks. For me, I had to make lists and cross them off. I had to design plans, a year plan, 5-year plan, 10-year plan. What's my direction? What's my purpose in life? What am I going to do? You know, between 16 and 23, I had no clue. And so that was a chaotic time period in my life where I still didn't have the time to process all the trauma I had been through before. And then from like 23, when I came up with my plan, my Triple Goddess Healing Arts and Movement, Self-Sustainable Healing Center, and I would focus on the movement aspect of it, dance, yoga, art, music, singing, all of that. And then eventually when I was older, I would go back and study Ayurveda more in depth. And then eventually I would be able to bring people that I studied with or that I met from other countries when I traveled and studied, and they would have a place to stay with me, and they would be able to teach people, or like the doctors that I worked with would be able to diagnose people and give them treatments and things like that. So I had a lot of plans, and then this man ended up crippling me, and he like totally destroyed my sense of self and independence, and everyone believing the lies and rumors about me is a huge part of the problem, because they were more than happy to see me suffering, and I will never understand why that is, or why people didn't think twice about it. But I hope that this will, you know, most people don't watch videos unless they're autistic. Most non-autistic people are going to watch a video about autism. It's usually autistic people. So there's nothing we can do to make the rest of the world care about who we are or what we are or how our lives are, you know? And when I grew up, no one really did. So there's a reason that I couldn't make all of the adjustments that young autistic people have now, that, you know, they can do, because I didn't have anybody to do that for me. Again, I didn't have anybody that was going to step into my life and be like, I've got you, you are safe. And then I could be myself and maybe have a chance in life at accomplishing my very practical goals. Instead, I had the opposite. A lot of the abusive and coercive control relationships that caused me to be in a lot of danger. And the only way that I could have avoided that is by trying to take a step back about my friends too, because there was a lot of friends that were not good in my life. So it's kind of like, and drugs were a huge problem in my area. They were a huge problem in my area. So I made a post that offended people. It was a very autistic moment, really. So a post where I offended people because I said, I wish there were no drug addicts in the world, because if there wasn't, anyone that saw me would have known I was telling the truth by how I looked, how my body looked, how I was walking or not walking. They would have known. But that made a lot of people upset, because in my area there were so many drug addicts that everybody had a family member that they were offended about, because they didn't understand what I was saying. It wasn't a personal attack on anyone, and it wasn't a judgment on anyone. It was a speculation that if there wasn't, anyone that saw me in that time period would have known I was telling the truth, because what he did, where he hit me, and everything that happened to my body made perfect sense. I have a spinal cord injury and I'm ambulatory. And yes, I'm proud of how I'm handling it too. But the reality is that these are things that people need to pay attention to, because we deserve to be in a world that is going to be supportive and safe. Even if the world doesn't want to change for us, then we need to change for ourselves. And if you're lucky enough to have one person in your life who cares about you, be very grateful for that. Don't take them for granted, and continue to try to advocate for people that don't have anyone, because that's the most important thing to do too, is like, we need to look out for people that don't have anyone. I've spent a lot of my life not having anyone that was going to look out for me, and it has not been easy. And my life could have been a lot different if just one person. Everybody back home, you got to lay your guilt to the side for this if you decide to watch it, but I highly doubt you will. But if I had had one person that gave a shit about me in my life, it would be a lot different right now. So, things to be aware of. Delayed processing. You don't get to decide when you do it. I don't know the tricks of how to. I just know that when you start to process things, make sure that you take your time and that you're gentle with yourself, and that you fully try to comprehend it slowly or however you need to, because it's a lot of things usually if you're anything like me. Make sure that you are assessing the dangers of the people that you're aligning with, even if it's something as simple as like a job promotion, someone that you think you can trust. Like, weigh what's going on. I was held hostage by a kid I went to high school with one night until I slept with him. He refused to let me leave, and then he kept me on the phone all night with a gun loaded, threatening to take his own life because he wanted us to be together. But he wouldn't let me leave. And when I got back to where I was staying, she just assumed I was really drunk and asked how much I had to drink instead of saying what's wrong. And I couldn't respond because of select mutism and because of everything that happened. And I never told anyone about that. I never told people about all the times I was raped. I never told people about all the abuse I've been through in my life, because for some reason, I figured that if I moved forward and kept focusing on my life, I could carve out a little piece of happiness for myself. But all it did is get a bunch of people to believe liars and rumors and put me in more danger. And then when I spoke up, all the people that put me through hell didn't even have accountability. So make sure that you are processing when you need to. Make sure you're assessing when you are in danger of being raped. It's more than you think, unfortunately, in our world. This is not to make young people paranoid or scared. This is to just bring attention to what is real. Trusting the wrong friends is very real. If they have ulterior motives, if they're constantly putting you down, if they make you feel insecure, or if they sabotage things in your life. You know, if you're about to go on something like a trip, you're about to leave and go somewhere and start a new life, and somebody makes you feel guilty about that, they might not be the best friend for you. Things like this. If they don't want to see you succeed, they're not the best friend for you. Abuse and coercive relationships, leave. If somebody puts their hands on your body in a negative way, leave. If somebody is constantly triggering you and you don't understand what's happening and you feel overwhelmed all the time and you've tried to sit and talk with them and you don't seem to get anywhere, leave. Human trafficking is very real. I'll do a separate video on that once I have a chance to fully process everything that just happened and is happening, or not happening, but you know, it was very dangerous. I was just in a lot of danger. And everyone believing gossip and lies and rumors and believing all the people who said, oh no, she's just paranoid, put me in worse danger. So I will make a separate video about that. And when you're in a community or a family or anything, do not believe gossip and lies about people until you talk to them and ask them what's going on. I have more than once been in a situation where people said to me, oh, she's a prostitute. Oh, she just does this. Oh, she just does that. Oh, she's a drug addict. And I never once would go around and say those things. I wouldn't be like, oh, she this, she that, she this, she that. Recently, because a lot of people believing lies and rumors and women that lied about me, I clarified some things which made people upset. But I clarified them and I stated them because I have been put through enough hell in my life now. And I am not going to keep the people safe that put me through it anymore, because I don't owe them anything. If anything, they need to have accountability and tell the truth, because I've been more than fair and more than just with people in my life. And the injustice that I just dealt with and that I'm still dealing with because of these dishonest people is unforgivable in my eyes. So until recently, I didn't really speak up about people. I just did what Tupac Shakur said, which was like, I don't want you to go hungry. I just don't want you sitting at my table because you put me in harm's way. You crossed a boundary with me morally. And if you do that with me, that's a big deal because I'm a forgiving woman. So make sure that you pay attention to those things that I just summarized like 3 times in a row, but maybe spoke too much because, well, Autism Unleashed is my thing now. So select mutism, goodbye. I'm finally speaking up. And if you're one of those people that put me through it or you feel guilty, if God hasn't already given you a warning, maybe tell the truth, have accountability, try to make change for the world and understand what I'm talking about and that I'm trying to make a world safer for all people. And if you have received a warning from God, then be careful about how you conduct yourself because God is very protective of me, I found out over the past few years. And I've been through enough. I hope this helps, even if it saves the life of one person.